Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide for this explainer, laying out the essential foundational theory for our San Antonio Clubhouse workshop on bread making. Before we literally get our hands covered in dough and flour, we really need to understand exactly what's happening inside our mixing bowls, right? Because baking, well, it isn't just following a recipe. It's orchestrating a fascinating living chemical reaction. By mastering the concepts we're looking at today, you're going to transform from someone who just simply follows instructions into a true baker who actually understands the why behind the dough.
So our roadmap today covers 5 key areas. Number 1, the science of flour. 2, yeast, which is the bread engine. 3, Texas ratios and humidity. 4, a baguette masterclass. And finally, number 5, to the kitchen. Okay, let's dive into this.
Part 1. The science of flour, from dust to dough. You know, bread is quite literally a 10,000-year-old living science project. It's been the foundation of human civilization for millennia. But if we zoom into its microscopic core, it all comes down to a kind of magical substance called gluten. Gluten is basically a viscoelastic web. But here's the crazy part. Flour doesn't actually contain gluten right out of the bag. Nope. It contains 2 specific proteins, glutenin and gliadin. And it's only when we mix those proteins with water and start kneading that they actually link together to form this incredibly stretchy, resilient web.
I actually love this quote from our workshop materials. Flour provides the skeleton, gluten, a web that holds shape. I want you to really visualize this metaphor for a second. Just like a building needs a sturdy steel framework before you go adding the walls and the roof, your bread needs a really strong architectural framework so it doesn't just collapse into a puddle. Flour isn't just some powdery filler. It is literally the structural engineering of your loaf. And because protein forms that vital skeleton, exact percentages dictate our final texture. Take a look at bread flour at the top there, sitting at a robust 12 to 15% protein. Milled from hard wheat, this is your strongest flour. It's the absolute gold standard for yeasted breads, bagels, pizza doughs, basically anything needing a high rise and a really chewy crumb. Next up is all-purpose flour at 10 to 12%. This is your versatile pantry essential, a nice blend of hard and soft wheat. It makes a decent loaf, sure, but it kind of lacks the ultimate chew of a true bread flour. Now look at whole wheat. It's also high at 13 to 15% protein, but there's a huge catch. It contains the entire wheat berry, including the sharp, fibrous edges of the bran. And those little bran flakes, they actually act like tiny razor blades, literally cutting the gluten strands as they try to form, which leads to a denser loaf. That's exactly why we usually blend it at a 25% substitution ratio. Finally, down at the bottom, we've got cake and pastry flours. Highly refined, high in starch, and very low in protein, just 7 to 10%. These are designed specifically for delicate, tender, and flaky textures. So the crucial point is this direct contrast right here. When we use a high-protein flour, we are intentionally building a strong, highly elastic web that's capable of trapping massive amounts of carbon dioxide gas. That is what gives us our chewy, beautifully well-risen artisan breads. But when we switch over to a low-protein flour, we're purposely designing a weaker structure. We want it to be crumbly, we want it to be soft and tender, which is exactly why a pie crust just melts in your mouth while a bagel gives your jaw a serious workout. Oh, and before we leave flour entirely, we've got to talk about processing. You'll often see bleached versus unbleached flour in the grocery aisle. Bleaching agents are chemicals, things like chlorine, that are used to artificially whiten the flour. But honestly, that chemical process actually weakens the protein structure. So for artisan bakers, unbleached flour is always the preferred choice. Why? Because it retains the maximum amount of natural flavor and gives us the strongest possible structural integrity for our gluten skeleton. Part 2, yeast, the bread engine.
So if flour is the skeleton, yeast is the engine that actually brings the entire project to life. Yeast is not just some baking powder. It is a tiny, single-celled living organism. And once it wakes up in our nice, warm dough, it gets right to work consuming the natural sugars present in the flour. And just like us, as it eats, it breathes. It exhales carbon dioxide gas. So those beautiful airy pockets you see in a perfect slice of rustic bread, those are quite literally microscopic balloons of yeast breath that got trapped inside our gluten skeleton. This gas production is what causes our dough to grow and rise during the proofing stage. Without this living engine inflating our dough from the inside out, our bread would just be a dense, heavy, flat cracker. No way we want that.
Part 3, Texas ratios and humidity, localizing the science.
All right, now let's zoom out from the microscopic level for a minute and look at our immediate environment right here in San Antonio. We absolutely have to talk about the Texas factor. See, flour acts a bit like a sponge. When we have days with really high, sticky humidity, the flour sitting in your pantry is actually already absorbing ambient moisture right out of the air. This means standard recipes might leave your dough feeling way too wet and sticky. So our local rule of thumb? Always keep a little extra flour on hand. If the environment is fighting you, you just simply adapt. Slowly add small dustings of flour to your mixing bowl until you feel the dough reach that perfect, tacky but not sticky consistency. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how simply tweaking the ratio of liquid to flour completely transforms your final product. I mean, everything exists on a spectrum of hydration. For lean, crusty breads like a classic baguette or a local bolillo, we use a standard 3-to-1 flour to water ratio. But if we want an ultra-hydrated, incredibly airy bread like a ciabatta, we drop that ratio down to 2.5-to-1, introducing way more water into the web. And then, of course, we have our beloved enriched doughs, things like Texas kolaches, donuts, and dinner rolls. Here, we might keep that 3-to-1 ratio, but we completely swap the water out for milk, and we introduce rich fats like butter. This softens up the gluten skeleton and gives us that beautifully tender, short crumb.
Part 4. The Baguette Masterclass. Putting it into practice.
Okay, let's look at how all this amazing science actually combines into a single, masterful recipe, the artisan baguette. We execute this in 3 absolutely critical steps. Step 1 is the bloom. We basically wake up our yeast engine by proofing it in warm water with just a little pinch of sugar until it's visibly frothy and alive. Step 2 is the window pane test. As we knead the dough, we are constantly checking the strength of our gluten skeleton. You gently stretch a small piece of dough between your fingers. If it stretches so thin that light actually passes through it like a window pane without tearing, boom, your skeleton is perfectly developed. And finally, step 3 is the overnight fermentation. We let the dough rest overnight at room temperature. This long, slow fermentation process gives the yeast and the flour the time they need to develop those deep, complex, nutty flavors that separate just a decent loaf of bread from a true artisan masterpiece.
Part 5. To the kitchen. Time to bake. Well, we've covered the microscopic proteins, the living engines of yeast, and the environmental factors of our Texas home. You are officially armed with the theory. The only question remaining is, how will you command this 10,000-year-old science to build your perfect loaf today? Now let's make some bread. Let's move to the kitchen area and let us start the practical section of this workshop.